Welcome, everyone. My name is John Hamre. I'm the president of CSIS, and I have the great privilege today to talk with Cindy McCain, the wife of John McCain. And Cindy McCain has become a towering figure in her own right on policy matters these last years, and we're so privileged to have her with us. This is a project that the McCain Institute and Freedom House and CSIS have been doing together. And it is about the health and future of democracy. Not only democracy in America, democracy around the world. And there's nobody that was a greater champion of that than the late Senator John McCain. So we're going to have a wonderful opportunity today to talk with Cindy McCain. And Ms. McCain, thank you. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Let me start, and this is going to be a bit unusual, but let me start, if I may, in the imagination of our minds to bring Senator McCain back to be a part of this conversation. Let's just pretend that you, Mrs. McCain, and Senator McCain, you've just had dinner with your family on a Friday or a Saturday night, and you're now just together in the living room in front of the fireplace, and you're talking to each other about the world that we're facing. Let me ask you, what would be the conversation the two of you would be having right now about democracy in America?
Well, I think the conversation would probably begin with, at some point, what occurred in our nation's capital and the future and state of democracy, as you mentioned. I know for a fact that on that day, if my husband had been around, that he would have not only been furious, but probably would have charged out there to face him down. I mean, there was no going to a safe room for him. So
that's true.
I also think, though, that he would be very frustrated and very sad for the state of affairs, particularly domestically, in what's happening, because we have seen a demise in the respect and honor that we should be giving our leaders, as well as the respect that our nation's capital and the body deserves. And so I think he would be very vocal, and I know he would probably be reviewing a speech with me, or talking about, who he talked to that day, or what kind of argument he may have gotten into with somebody on a different side. But he would be, I know, very, and probably up pacing a little bit, because he could walk and talk. That was kind of how he would talk things out. So and I think also our children would be listening intently, because of his vision and his love for this country was so deep that that the whole events of these last few years actually would have made him terribly angry.
Yeah, I was one of that huge crowd sitting way back at National Cathedral, and saw the remarkable testimonies from your family, and not only the spoken testimony, but the visual testimony. People standing in uniform. It was inspiring, and I know that was part of what the two of you did in giving character to your family about the importance of democracy. It sounds kind of sappy, I suppose, but democracy is precious. It was precious to him. I know it's precious to you.
It was. The one thing that we used to tell our children growing up was that democracy is precious, but it needs to be tended to. Democracy is something you have to keep working on, keep believing in, keep trusting in. And I think we've lacked a lot of that. And I know my husband thought that before he passed. We were lacking those true ideals that this country and certainly our House and Senate had believed in.
That's so true. Can I ask your thoughts about the quality of civics education in America? How well are we teaching to the next generation
I'm really glad you asked that question, because that is a discussion that John and I had on more than one occasion before he passed. In my personal opinion, I think the quality is poor. I think there's a lacking interest in it. I think the more, forgive me, the more exotic things like football and everything else are getting the greater attention, when we should be paying attention to the most precious thing we have as Americans, and that's democracy and how the democratic process works. And consequently, you see people, we saw it, and a perfect example is what was going on at the Capitol. Again, sorry to keep referring to that, but we saw, in my opinion, people, and younger people, I don't believe that really understood what this country was all about, what the Capitol was all about, understood what we should be doing as Americans to help, if they would like change, how to facilitate change, not in climbing the walls to our capital, but in how you change from a local and state level. And I made sure, my husband and I, we made sure that our children had great civics education, not only in school, but of course at home as well.
Yeah.
And I think every parent should be a part of that.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you've called for that. It's a rigging call, and I'm very grateful for it. Yeah, we don't really teach civics in America these days, and we need to. Let me ask, if I may. I remember talking with Senator McCain and actually accompanying him on a few trips. And the topic always was the rise of authoritarian countries in the world and the way they challenge democratic institutions, democratic countries. Share your thoughts with us, please.
Well, I obviously, you traveled with my husband, so you understood and saw at close hand what he believed and how he acted on it. In my opinion, we have had in recent years a leader particularly that didn't really stand up to these authoritative leaders and treat them for what they are: thugs, killers, people that don't believe in human life and believe in human dignity. And instead, we saw a man pandering to the worst of the worst. And in my opinion, it did more damage than one could ever do in a lifetime. And so that's where I think we miss my husband, is because he stood up to those guys. They not only knew exactly where he stood, but he stood up to them regardless of what would happen to him, because he did it for the right reasons. And that's what I think we missed in his previous administration. Not only did we miss it, we blew it in this previous administration.
Well, but there were strong voices like yours that were speaking out, about this larger, bigger America. And you took the lead. And I know that there were times when it was uncomfortable to be that spokesperson. How has it worked, in your world? Because you were courageous, and right now we have a lot of people that don't really want to listen to the other side.
Right. Well, I hope, if I did anything at all in these recent years, that I followed my husband's lead, and that is working together. In my opinion, I don't believe that we can succeed in anything unless we hear the other side. We don't have to agree, but we can perhaps compromise and work together for the good of the country, or the good of the issue that we're working on. Instead, we've seen divisive actions, I know you know, and we've seen people, the more divisive, the better, I think, in some cases, is how people, I think, react and behave. And that's the one. There's many reasons I miss my husband, but one of them is that very reason right there.
We all miss him for that very much. When you and Senator McCain were designing the architecture of the McCain Institute, you decided one of the major elements of it would be the Human Rights and Democracy Program. Share with us your thinking as you went through that.
Well, we both, we had great vision for it, and it was really fun working with him on this project, because he has such a mind, and And I do, mine is the other, we used to call it the two sides of the Institute. It's not, we're very much connected. But for me, I thought it was very important, and my husband agreed, that we not only tend to human rights, human dignity, rule of law, but also deal with the absolute issues that cause those. Human trafficking, for example, is one of those issues. How can we as good Americans profess the things that we do without making sure that our own house is in order? And so that's why we began the human trafficking program, was on a domestic level, to make sure that our own house was in order, and that people were indeed being treated with dignity, that they weren't being trafficked, that they weren't being held hostage or enslaved in any way. And it's still happening. So I believe that not only the McCain Institute, but many other organizations out there that work on these issues are critical to what we need to not only continue to profess, but to make sure that the outside world knows what we're doing, and that we do believe in what we say and we practice it.
I think you and Senator McCain were visionary on this, because you saw into the future, and you saw a time when human rights, democracy is being challenged. Like
It is.
No time before. And
Right.
it's really crucial to do this. I'm so grateful for your leadership on this.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Let me just, I think everyone who had the privilege to work with Senator McCain occasionally experienced a pretty sharp moment when he got mad. I remember a markup on the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he really lashed out. And I walked up to him afterwards and apologized, because I didn't mean to mislead him the way he concluded what I was doing. But I noticed something about John McCain. He never, ever got angry about something somebody said about him.
No, he never did.
What he did, he got angry when he felt that people were disrespectful of the country,
Right.
or the Navy,
Exactly.
or democracy. That's what,
You're exactly right.
that's what stirred him.
Mhm.
It was something deep inside of him. Where did that come from?
Oh, I think it came from many things. Life hands you many experiences, and certainly a great deal of that was his POW experience. As he said in his books and has said publicly in statements, he fell in love with his country when he was deprived of her company. And so I think for him, that was where this real love and passion began. Although he was already in the Navy and already serving, I think when deprived of what were the true freedoms and true rights that he deserved, when deprived of them, fell in love with them.
Yeah. I thought one of the most powerful little speeches that I've ever heard was the night when Senator McCain, conceded the election,
Mhm.
And it was powerful. It was moving. Do you remember that night? Do you remember
do
your
very well.
sentiments?
Yeah.
Yeah, share with us.
I do. What he wanted to say, and I think he succeeded brilliantly in doing so, was he wanted to tell the country, it's okay to not only is it okay to lose, but to lose with dignity, still love your country, love the people in the country, even though they didn't vote for him, but still love the people in the country, and make sure that other countries saw that in a democracy, there is such a thing as a peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
And so I think there are many things going through his mind when putting that speech together, because I was involved in that. And I just thought it was brilliant. That speech is taught in many universities around the country and around the world. And I'm just grateful that people listened to it, because I thought it was beautiful.
It was beautiful. And it was, I honestly, one of the most powerful speeches in recent memory. It really was. It was really great.
Agree.
I remember in his campaign, he went to a town up in New England that had a shipyard, and he was doing a campaign event. There were about 800 people there, and it went through the whole thing. And at the very end, he got to the end and he said, well, I'm surprised that nobody's asked me whether I will keep open the Portsmouth Navy shipyard.
Mhm.
And he said, you didn't ask me, but I'll just have to tell you, no, I'd have to recommend we close it. And here's the reason. Now, I don't know of a politician that would ever do that,
Yeah.
in the face of a community with lots to lose. And he said the truth to them, and he got
Yeah.
a standing ovation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was John. The one thing you knew you were going to get with John was the truth, whether you wanted it or not. And all of us appreciated that. I think sometimes my kids might not have. They thought that maybe they didn't need the harsh truth, but and that's what was so brilliant about John, is because he was a man of honor and he lived by the code of conduct. So truth and honesty is the key elements in all of that. I was there at that speech and I remember it. And I also remember seeing a very large tugboat go by and blast the horn for John. So it was fun.
Well, it was remarkable. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I thought it was such a unique insight into his character. We're coming to the end of our time that we have with you. I would cherish the opportunity to talk with you for hours. Can I just ask you? You've been talking about Senator McCain, but I know that he was your life partner, and he relied on your judgment and how you thought about things. What are your hopes now for America?
My hope is that our younger leaders, our leaders that are coming up, our children that are coming up that will be leaders, can learn from my husband's life and from what he lived by. And I hope that through his teachings and the things he has left behind for us to not only understand, but to study, that people will really gather and understand why he did what he did, and more importantly, why people should do the right thing. Doing the right thing, as you know, is not always easy. And John was the first one to say, boy, doing the right thing can really hurt sometimes. But that's what makes a good leader. And that's why John was so very, very ambitious on the effort to have us bring in character-driven leadership as part of the Institute. I would hope that people could learn from him. I would hope that people would miss his kind of politics, that we also enjoy, because we do miss it. It's a new generation now. And I hope that we will see leaders live by the kinds of things that John did, and perhaps learn and carry on his legacy.
That's marvelous. My goal in this little conversation was to bring Senator McCain back among us, in our imaginations.
Yeah.
You've done that. You've done that.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. I'm so grateful for this. This project is intended to advance Senator McCain's and your vision about a stronger, more democratic, more constructive world. And I'm so grateful that you gave us this chance to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you having me. I really do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.